Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you today. It's really my privilege to be here. The Royal Television Society holds a very special place in my heart because it was right here in 2016 that I showed you the very first trailer for the very first episode of The Crown. Now, over the next 7 years, The Crown went on to become the most nominated British television show in Emmy history, and only one of 3 to win Best Drama. But I'll remember it because what we hoped to do was to stand conventional wisdom on its head. Peter Morgan's pitch was for a 6-season show with a rotating cast, a show that would take 10 years to produce, something that no one had ever tried before, and something that most people said would never work. But it did, introducing an entire new generation of stars to the world. Now, besides being one of the best shows of the last decade, The Crown is also a perfect example of why Britain remains one of the best places in the world for TV and film. Now, you have some of the best writers, directors, producers, actors, crafts, crew, locations, anywhere in the world. Now, I've always thought of the UK as the birthplace of prestige television, a creative culture like none other. It's why Netflix invests more here in the UK than anywhere else outside of the United States. Since 2020, we have invested $6 billion in the UK creative community. We've worked with over 30,000 cast and crew. Today, as we sit in this room, we have over 100 productions active in the UK. I recently had the pleasure to visit a couple of those sets, Bridgerton's Thursday Murder Club, My Oxford Year, Wake Up Dead Man, our new Knives Out film. So I have seen firsthand the scope and ambition of British-made shows and films. Now, this wealth of talent is a great British success story. And I say that because it did not happen on accident. It happened because you have a great public service broadcasters and institutions here that nurture British talent and creativity. Institutions like RTS, the oldest television society in the world. It happened because you constantly have supported regulations that encourage creativity, innovation, and long-term thinking. It happened because you invest in education and training in the creative arts at every level, as well as investing in your amazing facilities, all of which have been supported by a highly competitive tax incentive, which makes the UK an even more attractive place for anyone looking to produce television and film. Filming here in Britain is always a privilege, and we have never found it to be a sacrifice. In other words, Britain has become one of the best countries in the world for TV and film because you made it happen. And now with competition for people's time and attention very, very high as it's ever been, and the barrier to entry into entertainment as low as it's ever been, it's time to make it happen again. The question is how? Now, I'm going to start with a disclaimer here. I am not British. You probably could tell from the accent. And Netflix is not a British company. We do, however, operate in 190 countries, including this one. So we've learned a few lessons along the way. And today, I'd like to share a couple of those with you. First, to succeed, we always have to remember to keep the audience first. And that means embracing change. The entertainment industry has always been defined by change. New technology comes along, new companies pop up, and patterns of consumer behavior shift. We saw it with cable, and then with home video and streaming. And now we're seeing it happen all over again. Today, choice and control are the price of admission to modern entertainment. It's streaming that consumers want. They keep telling us that. It's how our industry stays relevant and how it grows in the face of intense competition from all directions. Like cable TV and home video before it, streaming also opens up new opportunities for creators to make their voices heard, for distributors to reach bigger audiences, and for those audiences to have more choice of what to watch. Just look at this summer alone. It's been a blockbuster few months for streaming. Bridgerton, The Bear, House of the Dragon, 3 wonderful shows that are completely different and are all attracting enormous audiences. Now, at this point, you may be thinking, sure, it's easy for Netflix to talk about change. Seems like you guys are pushing a lot of that. But trust me, we have struggled to adapt too. You know, back when we first started streaming, the technology was not great, and neither was the content. But we had two big competitors: piracy, which let people stream for free, and our own DVD business. And we knew to succeed in streaming, we had to create something better than free. And then we also knew that we had to let our DVD business go. Steve Jobs said it best when he said, if you don't cannibalize your business, somebody else will. So it was a painful split for the company back then. We even told all of our DVD employees they could no longer attend the company meeting. So in a sense, saying you are a part of the past, not a part of the future. But it was the reason that we were able to adapt and a reason we were able to grow. And today, look where it's taken us. Our members can watch a world of entertainment for the fraction of the price of a DVD box set of The Sarandos in 2007. And they don't have to wait 2 months for all those episodes to come out, and they don't have to wait for a film to finish its theatrical release. I know that the TV business was built on Windows, but trust me, audiences do not care about Windows at all. Never hear them talk about that at dinner. When you work in our business long enough, it can be easy to get distracted by all of these complexities. Rights, distribution, technology, it goes on and on. And these are all very important things, but what really matters is how well we serve the audience. What are we willing to do to serve them better? Which brings me to the next point. People often ask me if we really need so many movies and TV shows on Netflix. It's a debate that you're having here in the UK. I know that as well. And I always answer the same way, with an emphatic yes. People have such different and eclectic tastes that you cannot afford to program for just one sensibility. You have to love it all. Prestige dramas, indie films, true crime, romantic comedies, stand-up, documentaries, reality TV, you have to love it all. It's no surprise, for example, that those people who love Beckham also love Drive to Survive. That's pretty intuitive. Now, what may surprise you, though, is that people who love The Crown also like Dolly Parton's Heartstrings. Now, I guess Dolly is royalty in her own right, but that's, again, how diverse people's tastes are. So as a teenager, my first job was working in a local video store, watching movies all day and serving customers all night. And my memory is pretty lousy today, but back then, I could remember lines from movies. I could remember nearly every actor in nearly every film and TV show ever made. And I loved recommending something new and unexpected to our members. Now, that experience taught me about putting the audience first. It also taught me so much about how much weight people put behind the decision of what to watch. And I believe we have to approach this today in the very same way. Put the audience first. Think about it not as critics, not as media executives, but think about this job from the perspective of a fan. Come to this as a fan. The third lesson was not that intuitive to Netflix when we first launched internationally, but over the years, we have learned that everything starts local. At a time when anyone can watch anything, anytime, anywhere in the world, it's very tempting to try to program for a global audience. But trust me, that is a mistake. Because when you try to make something for everyone, you typically end up making something that appeals to no one. There really is rarely a such thing as a global audience for anything. It's why when we greenlight a series or a film in the UK, in Mexico or Korea, we do it because we think our British, our Mexican, and our Korean audiences will love it. And you know what? When you make something authentic, something that appeals to certain people in certain places, it tends to appeal to a lot of people in a lot of places. As an example, take a look at Supercell, a story about 5 superpowered South Londoners that became a huge hit in America. Or Baby Reindeer, which was #1 on the Netflix top 10 in 79 countries. And by the way, also cleaned up with 6 Emmys a couple of nights ago. Or Heartstopper, which spoke to a whole new generation of viewers from Brazil to Japan. Or The Gentleman, which was beloved in countries from Norway to Nigeria. All of them became global sensations because they were all, in their own way, authentically British. Made in the UK for UK audiences by UK creators with UK cast and crews. The other thing that these shows all have in common is they were commissioned by a UK team based here in London and led by a remarkable Brit herself, Anne Menza. Now, when Anne and her team say yes to a project, it's because they see something in the pitch or the idea that is surprising or bold. They feel the writer's vision or the producer's vision in that pitch. And data can help us a little bit. Programming is far more art than science, though. It's why our algorithms cannot reverse engineer successful storytelling. If it were as simple as getting more data or building better algorithms, we'd never have a flop. And we do. Because TV is subject to hot hands and cold streaks, just like every other human endeavor. This is what makes this thing so exciting. You never know exactly what's going to make one of those shows take off like that. It's also why we feel a responsibility to support and nurture the people and the communities that make it possible. It's why we're developing the next generation of creative talent in partnership with BAFTA, the National Youth Theatre, and Screen Skills, and through our own productions. It's why we've supported productions across the UK, from Sex and the City in Wales, to Bridgerton in the South End, and One Day in Scotland. This is why we're also investing in every level of the creative community, not just through the shows and films that we're making, but also through our licensing dollars. Most people don't know this, but Netflix actually owns less than 25% of the IP in the UK catalog. We partner with many of you in this room on co-productions, most recently Lockerbie with the BBC. And we've invested in production hubs like Shepperton and Longcross. And we also have long-term studio arrangements for facilities in Northern Ireland, in Wales, and in Manchester. So we couldn't be more excited to be here, and believe me, we're not going anywhere. This leads me to the final point. There is so much potential in TV today. So much of the fandom right now is driven by younger audiences, and we see it in the videos that they create for TikTok, and we see it in the trailers and clips that they devour on YouTube and Instagram, and we see how they obsess on storylines on subreddits. This generation loves stories as much as we ever have, maybe more. We just have to find the right ways to connect with them. When the very first TV broadcast went out of the UK in 1936, the announcer described it as the magic of television. And while a lot has happened since then, social change, cultural upheaval, wars, pandemics, that magic is just as inspiring today as it was a century ago. That's because stories have always mattered. Stories endure, whether it's from film to TV, from video to DVD, or from DVD to the internet. It's what makes them so powerful. It is not the technology, even though that is very, very, very important. It is the depth of the writing. It's the power of the plot. It's the chemistry between two actors. The heart that no model and no machine can replicate or replace. I know there's a lot of anxiety in our industry right now. There's concern about falling investment. There's threat from AI. And there's competition from platforms like YouTube and TikTok. And I get it. I think about these things every day too. But every day, someone comes up to me. They want to talk about a new show or a new film that they just watched and they loved. And I've seen that look on their face. That's the same exact look they had on their face back in the video store back years and years ago. It's the exact same face I saw in this room in 2016 when we showed that first trailer for The Crown. It's what makes me so optimistic about the future, because if we can focus on the audience, embrace change, and remain fearless in the stories that we're telling, I know that we're going to look back 20 years from now and say we really were just getting started. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed. As you've just heard, Ted Sarandos loves to curate. He is, to use a very analog expression, a Rolodex of TV shows. He could be the mastermind champion of movies, but he's restless. And some people would say he's ruthless. Netflix needs another challenge. Now, he came up with binging, but isn't binging a bit last century? Netflix was a disruptor, but can it still call itself that? In a way, you're like the kind of Leon Trotsky of television. Mind you, you're extremely rich, so you're not going to be a Leon Trotsky in that sense, but you need permanent revolution.
What a great way to start the morning.
Yeah. You need permanent revolution. I'm going to talk to you about that in a minute. But before we do that, curate Ted Sarandos' Big Night In.
Wow. I love Ted Sarandos' Big Night In because most of my nights are out. But when I'm in, we've got a cozy spot in the house with the TV and my wife and the two dogs, and we are programming for each other. And I will tell you that the most difficult thing to find in this world of choices is something that we both love.
Don't you have an algorithm for that?
I know we should. We should, but I can tell you that my wife and I don't have very similar tastes, which probably no two people in this room likely do either. So the thing I love the most is something that we could watch together and both really enjoy. My wife really, really loves Emily in Paris, so we just had a great night binging all four of the second part of the new season of Emily in Paris. And I'm generally watching cuts of our upcoming projects, new episodes or full binges sometimes of an upcoming show of Netflix. But I'm also very keen to watch most of our competitors' projections as well. So I mentioned in the Sunday Times that I like The Bear, but I just into the third episode of Bad Monkey on Apple, which is my friend Vince Vaughn's new show, and I do find that beyond that, I also try to figure out what's the trend of creativity, what influences storytelling today, and how is that different than it was 50 years ago? And I might go in the same kind of deep dive that I recently did in August, where I watched a wealth of films from the 1970s. Someone gave me a great book for my 60th birthday. It's called The Stewardess Was Flying the Airplane, which is just a recap of the movies of the 70s. And from that, I watched Nashville and Network and Last Picture Show. So I've revisited a lot of great films from the 70s to try to figure out what kind of magic was happening, what was in the water in 1975 when they were making such incredible films.
And you've talked about there are upcoming challenges in trying to find fresh water, but you're very quick to praise British broadcasters. But really, do you think they're bold enough now? I mean, they've got to keep their share.
Yeah, look. I think I come at this from a pretty luxurious position of not having legacy media in our portfolio.
You would nix legacy media quickly, wouldn't you?
Oh, for sure. I mean, look, I just think what you see is over and over again. In the U.S., we publish the engagement data regularly of what people are watching on television, and streaming surpassed 40% recently. Yeah. And if you're considering the things that are only on broadcast today, and cable, there's a very strong signal there that the consumer's desire is for choice and control that is gained through streaming, and the economics of streaming as well.
So there's a kind of strange thing here. Basically, you spend more in the UK than in any other territory.
Yes.
But you still only have 10% of viewing. So, I mean, that's a problem.
Yeah, the public broadcasters are quite good in the UK. So, I mean, the lion's share of the streaming in the UK is on the BBC iPlayer, which is great. Again, advancing the technology, incredible programming, great, I call it product market fit, where the programming itself fits the audience quite well. The 10% that we have is growing, and we're going to continue to grow it. But we have to earn that. We have to do that by creating the program that people love. So and that is our challenge, day in and day out.
So you give your teams their challenges. So what, this time in 2 years' time, do you want to be taking 25%?
Look, I don't think there's any reason that we couldn't, as long as we continue to do the things that we just talked about, which is really have to keep the audience up front. I just think, again, I don't want to be like a broken record this morning, but I think mostly when I talk to people in our industry, we talk a lot about things like the Emmy Awards, which is nice and it feels quite good. But a lot of the things that wind up doing the Emmys, one thing that I'm really exceptionally proud of, Baby Reindeer, which did exceptionally well at the Emmys the other night, is also an enormously popular show on Netflix around the world. Yeah. Many of the award-winning shows are quite little watched, and that is not our goal. No. If I had to choose between the awards and the reviews and the audience, I will always choose the audience. And luckily, I think when you do it right, you can sometimes do both.
Yeah, and you got a clutch of awards for Baby Reindeer, but there's also been controversy around Baby Reindeer, which I know Netflix doesn't particularly like. No broadcaster particularly likes controversy unless it brings more eyeballs. and I wonder if you now think, looking back, that you needed a stronger editorial grip on this, because it's called a true story, but whose truth, I think. And I wonder whether or not that was something that you regret, that the editorial grip.
Look, we are facilitating storytellers to tell their stories. This is Richard's true story. And I could also give you a bit of news this morning, actually. Richard, we did this morning, we actually finished our first look deal with Richard Gadd to do his next work at Netflix. I think he's a brilliant storyteller. It told an incredible story. And I think the path of Baby Reindeer to the world, from just a few years ago to a complete unknown storyteller telling his story at Fringe in Edinburgh, to an international sensation, is something that is so unique to the times that we live in, and so unique to Netflix, frankly, that we're able to do that.
Yeah,
and I'm very proud of Richard and proud of the story he told and the way he told it, and it is his true story.
And it's an incredible story, and it's done incredibly well. All I'm saying is that I'm not talking about individuals. I'm just talking about the oversight for things like this. Do you think that sometimes it could be stronger?
Look, I think that this is Baby Reindeer is his story, and he told he told his story. And it's not a documentary, and there are elements of the stories that are dramatized. We're watching it performed by actors on television. Yeah. We think that's abundantly clear that there is dramatization involved. And it is interesting. And I would also point out it's a fairly uniquely British debate. This debate is not happening anywhere else in the world about Baby Reindeer.
Thank you. Yeah. You say you're giving the audience what they want that they don't know they want, and that's the whole idea of the algorithm. If you watch Chaos, which first step was just extraordinary, you'll be offered the end of the fucking world, wicked little letters, and worst X ever. Why? Yeah. I mean, I think that's so interesting because you think that...
I'm sure you'd have the same reaction if you're watching The Crown and you're suddenly served Dolly Parton. But, oops, sorry about that. But I think it's unintuitive but algorithmically true, and and part of that discovery is what makes this all work. Years ago, when we used to just mail DVDs around, we've been working on this since the beginning of the company, so about 25 years of trying to help people find things, right? And this goes back to that video store experience. I used to work behind the counter of the store, and I would always marvel at how long it would take people to choose something to take home.
And presumably you became very irritated and went like, look, you'll like this.
Oh, yeah, eventually I had to, just to get them out of the store, because they would read the back of the boxes, every one of them, and some people would spend an hour to choose a movie to watch that night. And finally, so they did find great comfort in a suggestion, which kind of just told me again how important people view that decision. Yeah. And I got very curious about it once, and I asked somebody, I said, excuse me, why are you taking so long to do this? It's just a movie. And they basically said, I'm picking the movie tonight for my family. And it says something about me, what I pick. Yeah. They want to choose correctly. So there's a lot of value that goes into this. And fortunately, with what we've been working on this now, 25 years of technical learning here, which compounded is like 1,000 years of technical learning of trying to help people find things based on what things that they like and like. And I was suspicious of it myself 25 years ago. So when I joined the company, I would constantly be recommended this documentary called Genghis Blues. Has anyone ever heard of the Genghis Blues?
No.
It's a very obscure documentary about Tibetan throat singers. And I thought...
It's better than bloody Morris dancers, ain't it?
But I had no reason to believe that I would be interested in a documentary about Tibetan throat singers. So finally, in an effort to disprove this algorithm, I said, I'm going to watch it. And I watched it, and I loved it. It was an incredible film. So there's something to this.
Obviously, we're going to see Tibetan throat singers in somebody's algorithm.
They're coming. There's coming, yes.
But what about the idea that...
The search is going to go through the roof today.
Do you think the recommendations... People can't really switch off the recommendations, can they? Would that be a thing to say?
No, I would...
Please leave me alone.
No, and I think you would have a lesser experience if you did.
Licensing's a good part of your business. And do you think there's some low-hanging fruit, in back catalogs that actually Netflix can still get a lot of value out of, and particularly for producers here, because traditionally Netflix doesn't give IP on their solely owned, but if you're a production company with stuff on the shelf, there's stuff that takes off that you don't even realize is going to take off.
There's a wealth of great film and TV that's been produced over the years that have been under-distributed or just in the wrong place at the wrong time. That Netflix has been able to bring back to life and bring a very large audience.
Is very much part of your vibe.
100%. There was much to do over the summer about Suits and how basically what's fascinating to me about Suits and how well that played on Netflix around the world was that in the year and before it came on Netflix and the year before that, it had been widely distributed on Amazon and on Peacock in the US and ran for years on television, and then it comes on Netflix and finds it in a brand new audience. This is back to that trusted algorithm that basically shows people that, I know you don't think you're going to like this, but give it a shot. And when they do, and I do think that helps the subscription business and the kind of very ease of use, where I can push play, and if I don't like it, I'll watch something else.
So going back to the beginning of Netflix, you weren't going to have adverts. Now you've got the double offer of cheaper if you have the adverts, not so cheaper if you don't. But there's a question of acting more like a conventional broadcast in the sense that you say you want television to bring people together. But that's kind of reinventing the wheel, isn't it? Because it's like you want more live events. You want to do more live television.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I think television has a lot of different use cases. For some people, it's a very personal experience, and for others, it's a very communal one. And depending on what it is, I do think there's nothing like those moments when the world comes together at the same time, watches it, and goes through an experience together.
So you're looking for that stuff now. You're
Absolutely.
looking to have live shows, more sport.
Some. We just did a deal recently to bring 2 NFL football games to Netflix around the world on Christmas Day this year. That'll be the only place to watch NFL football in the world. Will be on Netflix that day. I think that we also will kick off next year the WWE, which will be weekly live every week. And then we've got this Mike Tyson, Jake Paul fight coming up around the world. And those are just events that I think people really love. If you look at what people are talking about online, they certainly are talking about those events. Our roast of Tom Brady was unbelievable. And now we could have done that not live, and it would have had nowhere near the cultural impact that it did doing it live.
So actually, you make more cultural impact often when you're live.
Yeah, and sometimes there's a great creative impact as well. So that Tom Brady roast was scheduled for 2 hours. If you were watching, it ran for 3 hours and 5 minutes, so we ran over a little. But
Live telly, folks.
Yeah, it was live telly, and it was great. And I would look back at it and I'd say I could hire the best editor in the world, and they wouldn't have found an hour to take out of that show. So I was thrilled that we were able to do that.
So
and the audience, by the way, kept growing every minute of the show was on.
So never say never is a mantra that most broadcasters would use. But what other territories? I don't mean territories geographically, but would you ever go into a political debate show or anything like that?
Look, again, it's the never say never. I would say that we are our challenge for our company is to entertain the world. Political debate is a form of entertainment, but we tend to try to give people some refuge from some of the political discourse that happens in the world too.
So also something like a shiny floor show. You're looking for a big new shiny floor show, notoriously difficult to do.
They are very, yeah.
So are you?
By the way, I deeply admire the more traditional things that TV does, and fans clearly love them. So we had a nice taste of it with Rhythm and Flow, our music competition show. In France particularly, it was an enormous success. So we're doing local formats of it around the world, and it's really growing.
But again, those shiny floor shows, especially when there's an element of competition, might be live-ish or...
Yeah.
So that's another...
So live variety and those kind of things. It's like it's more consistent somewhere between what we do with stand-up comedy and things like the roast.
I mean, on the news this morning, there's David Attenborough said that the world would be in a much worse place without natural history programming, some of which, of course, you've done. But where is the next generation of that? Is something that, particularly for the generation coming up with kind of 12 to 25-year-olds, where's that?
David Attenborough will be a very missed voice in that world at some point. Right? At some point, I think he's going to be doing it for many, many years. I think we're constantly investing in our planet and projects like this, like we did with Sir Richard. I do think that there's ways to continue to press on new technology to take that production, even those productions, to a new level. Because I do think that there's some direct connection between the growth of the use of marijuana and nature shows. I think there might be it might be a way that people enjoy those two things
with
together.
With your Netflix subscription, you get a couple of hits.
You might be, yeah. I think there might be something going on there. But
well, good to know. You're very successful. You're saying you're very successful, but you've got big challenges ahead, and in terms of eyeballs, however, you say you're going to put the price up. Where's the justification for that?
When we do, I'm not saying we're going to put the price up. What I'm saying is
you did say you will be putting the price up.
No, I said what we do is with our businesses, we bring a lot of value to the consumer. So if you are enjoying Netflix, you stick around a long time, and if the more you're enjoying Netflix, the more you are willing to pay for it, because it's a great value for the dollar.
You can't give people a discount for sticking about.
No, we have to bring you more value for the dollar every time, and then every once in a while we have to come back to you and say we'd like to have a little more money so that we could keep putting into this virtual cycle of constant improvement. So if you're not seeing, by the way, it's very easy. We have a very instant feedback loop. If you don't think you're getting value for the dollar at Netflix, it's one click cancel. You can just cancel immediately. So
But you don't want people to cancel, do you?
No, of course
so
not.
therefore,
Of course
you're
not.
having to give more value, don't you?
We also don't. What we don't want to do is, cost, as you know, production cost continue to escalate. What we don't want to do is offer less value to the dollar. So this is a constant way to constantly stay in tune with: are we adding value? Are you willing to pay a little bit more to get a little bit more? And we keep putting that in and putting that in.
However,
and by the way,
do you have to deliver a bit more before you put the price up? Do you have to show that you're actually earning every cent?
we put a lot of work into making sure that those increases are timed well to the value created.
So when will you be timing it well
I'm
for
not,
the UK?
I'm not going to give that formula for our competitors to follow.
But I mean, the price at the moment is, I'm not even sure what the price is anymore.
Look, the price is $4.99, starting at $4.99. So
if you take adverts, of course.
yeah, a lot of people have no problem with adverts.
Sure.
Yeah.
So in terms of when you might put that price up, I know you don't want to tell your competitors.
I'm going to go back to that $4.99.
Okay. But you're
incredible value for money.
But in the UK, you'll consider putting the price up next couple of years.
You can go back. You look at it backwards, and you can build your own model to it. We're not going to I'm not announcing anything today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you on a point of more on the legacy thing for a minute, because what you said is that legacy companies, you've got Disney, you've got Warner Brothers, you've got Discovery, you talked about British broadcasters to a certain degree. They're hanging on to their heritage like a ball, and it is a ball and chain.
Yeah.
As you said, and I've said several times, you just shut your DVD employees out of the office.
They could come to work, they couldn't come to the meetings anymore. That's all.
Yeah. But do you think that it's imminent for some of these legacy guys, that there's just not going to be the money left?
Yeah, look, when we first started doing what we're doing, it was viewed as a disadvantage that we didn't have all these legacy businesses to draw on to program Netflix, which left us to be pretty scrappy. We didn't have any IP. All of our hits were original. They continue to be primarily original, which I think has been a real strength for us. I also think in the same way is that protecting, if you ever find yourself protecting the business, you're pretty much dead. So the idea is we've got to constantly challenge ourselves to break it and move our business forward on behalf of our consumers. Right now, a lot of people debate about our windowing of movies, that we don't put them in theaters first before they go to Netflix. Well, it's unique to Netflix is that we have enough scale to do that. We can uniquely spend $200 million on a film and have enough scale of viewership to put it directly to Netflix without trying to recover some of the economics in the theater, which I think is a fairly inefficient way to distribute movies.
But some movies, no matter how big people's screens are in their house, some movies look much, much better on the huge screen.
Sure.
So you put them out there. I mean,
sure, they have plenty of, correct. They do out, they run in a few theaters.
But you've talked about TikTok and you've talked about YouTube and things, and you've talked about, thinking of a new way to attract a new generation. Yeah. So is that the next disruption? Because as I say, you're looking like an established, you're not a disruptor anymore in the sense that you would cover the waterfront and so many things. Now you're going to do live. Now you're going to go into more shiny floor. So where you're after the next big disruption? Yeah,
the disruption still remains in delivering to consumers what they're begging for, which is choice and control. Mm-hmm. And that's an ongoing evolution, I think, for on behalf of consumers that we're continuing to work for. They're not saying we don't want to watch any of these kind of things we used to watch. A lot of that program is very, very entertaining. And we want to continue to entertain the world, whatever that means. If you look at the Emmys the other night, one of the things that I think is a real testimony to what we're trying to do is best limited series, best documentary series, best animated series, best hosted nonfiction series. The breadth of shows that we were able to do well on behalf of our audience, I'm thrilled with. And it's not that we're doing one thing. We continue to do prestige television. The Crown, Ripley, and Baby Reindeer all won Emmys the other night. And those are all in Netflix, and we're continuing to do
And there'll be more Crown.
Sure.
There's going to be more Crown.
We all have to tell Peter we want more Crown.
Okay. I think that gives him a blank check, so that's good.
Yeah. By the way, I should tell you, I know we only have a few minutes. I would like to, maybe a little bit of news, because I talked earlier about the joys of producing here. For Netflix, on Thursday, we're going to publish our twice-a-year engagement report, which is what people are watching around the world. And what folks in this audience will be thrilled to know is that when we publish Thursday, number 1, 2, 3, and 4 shows were all produced here in the UK. Fool Me Once, Baby Reindeer, Bridgerton, and I brought my notes just in case it's very off the presses, just so I don't forget. Oh, The Gentleman, of course,
Yeah.
The Gentleman. But number 1, 2, 3, and 4, combined audience of 360 million households.
Before I finish, just tell me very briefly the quick story of 100 Years of Solitude, because you got it over the line. I mean, I'm thrilled about that. You got it
Yeah,
over
this
the
is
line.
one of a few of the big swing bets that our teams are making around the world. 100 Years of Solitude is one that's been kind of the white whale to try to adapt for years, and the family and the
And to get the
estate
family to agree.
have been quite protective of it. Paco Ramirez, who runs our content in Latin America, just relentlessly pursued this, convinced them in the attention to detail and the care that we would put in that IP, and they agreed to it. It's really beautiful. I can't wait for people to see it later this year.
Yes, it will be out later this year.
Yeah. And similarly, we have Sena from Brazil and
Leopard.
from Italy.
Yeah.
These are kind of iconic bits of IP and star power like Sena in Brazil that we're able to work with, because I think they've seen the kind of quality of care that we bring to the projects.
Ted Sarandos, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.